How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk, and we had a great question sent our way, and it deals with communication and compromise. Gangi, what happens when an incident occurs and two departments just can't seem to get along and helping to reach that final outcome? That's a great question because I know that happens a lot. I mean, sometimes custody and civilian staff, they could rival, and I think it really stems from just not understanding each other's perspective, and in some cases compromising. So we're going to talk about the communication that's needed to reach that point where we know where we got to be. Both departments know where we got to be, but the question is, why are we both together having such a hard time getting there? That's the key. So guys, if you haven't, this show is dedicated to those brave men and women that work behind the wall. So please subscribe, interact, engage, share, and hit that bell. That bell is going to notify you every time I post up a video. I stand by for our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk about communication and compromise.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Being a corrections officer takes its toll on even the strongest individuals. The constant need to perform at the highest level, putting your life at risk in a hostile environment, and the mental scarring of traumatic experiences. 31% of corrections officers show symptoms of PTSD, and 66% of people with PTSD also suffer with a substance abuse problem. The Transformations First Responders program is specially designed to help veterans and officers heal from the grips of addiction and PTSD in a comfortable, supportive, and serene setting. You are not alone. If you have questions about the services we offer, give us a call at 866-762-8454 to get more information on this affordable and life-changing program.
Thank you guys for listening to our sponsors. I think this is a great question when we're talking about communication and compromise between multiple departments, because now you're also starting to see, if done correctly, what's expected from administration. Administration facilitates communication, and if need be, compromise between multiple departments. So the department heads, they know their policies. They know what's expected of them. The administrative end knows or should know the policies of the different departments. They should know it, because in case these policies conflict, they need to be the ones that say, hey guys, I know you want to do it this way, but if you do it this way, this will affect this department. So basically, administration kind of tries to facilitate and make sure that communication is there and that the policies work in alignment with each other. Because we need, ultimately, we all have the same end result. It's just the journey, which I would say is the policy, is sometimes different. And sometimes when people write these policies, they write them in an isolated manner. So basically, I'm only worried about my department. This is what has to get done. And they don't really look to the left or right to see how those policies could affect the other departments. And maybe that's because they may not have access to those policies. But either way, if a new policy is to be implemented from a department, it'd be good if they would sit at the table with other department heads and ask, hey, we're thinking about doing these things. How does that affect what you guys do? This way we don't get surprised later on as the policy goes into effect that, oh, we didn't see this coming. Well, that's because you didn't talk to anybody. Had you brought that policy idea to the table, we would have been able to figure out that, hey, this had a major conflict. A lot of the times the conflict could be between civilian staff and custody, because there'll be a lot of policies that are not security minded. And now you didn't go ahead and talk to anybody with the security mind. And now, unfortunately, the policy that you have put in play is a total violation of safety and security. And now you're starting to get the conflict between civilian and custody staff. That's why I say, put everybody at the table. You want to implement this? Let's discuss it. But ultimately, we all have the same end game. All have the same end game. It's the way we get there. As a frontline officer, I communicated with other departments. As I said, we are the definition of community policing. I had so many resources. If I needed something, I was able to get what I needed to get. But that was more of just, unfortunately, to pass it to the right party. It wasn't really anything to deal with discussing conflict. As I became a supervisor and I was more in charge of making decisions because I was that next step, now it starts to become, I can start seeing conflict with policies from different departments, especially like if I had to move something forward and they were like resistant and I'm trying to say, hey, well, I have to get this done. They say, yeah, well, we have to get this done. And whatever the case may be and what we both had to get done was in conflict of each other. Speaking in generalities, I don't want to speak specifics, but sometimes you can have conflicts, and I'm sure guys who are experienced can fill in the blanks here with different departments like medical and social services, or in our case here, let's say medical and custody. So a policy that's put in play or an action that's needed by medical that just may not be on par with safety and security at this specific moment. So sometimes, guys, we deal with incidences where I wish were easily defined by policy and procedure, but they're not. And sometimes these incidences could cause a bit of a conflict, and now the department heads or the supervisors are scrambling, trying to find that compromise, where both departments get what's needed. Because in some cases, guys, one department may have the solution and they're ready to go, but then the other department say, well, hold on, if you do that, that violates this. And now you get a bit of a conflict here because the two department heads are arguing with each other, not understanding that, hey, guys, it's not that they don't want to help each other, but their policy is something totally different than what you have. And now they're going to be resistant because they don't want to violate policy, from their end. So what I used to always tell people, especially now in the higher position, is that for my departmental heads, you have the power of discretion. You have the power to make a decision that may need to go outside of policy, but not breaking policy. Not breaking policy. Just something in an effort to bring things back to policy. So sometimes I think that the conflict between both of the departments, like the different departments, may be because we don't understand that their policy, even though we have the same end game, may be slightly different in how they get there than ours. So just like we don't want to back away from what policy says for us, they're going to do the same thing because they're afraid that if they break the policy, that they are going to get in trouble. So we can't be mad. We just have to say, okay, so what does your policy say? What does my policy say? Okay, we have to figure out a middle road. And that's where the department heads or the supervisors have a bit of discretion. And in a higher position, if you see that this has occurred and a decision's made, you have to listen to those department heads because they were living and breathing the moment and they had to act at that moment. So we can go back and Monday night quarterback a million things, but at the end of the day, the problem wasn't really the decision that was made within the best means possible. Because remember, I'm talking about two department heads making a good decision for both departments. The problem is the policy, because the policies were written in isolation of each other, which means that if you're going to create a new policy and that policy has a chance, it's not just a departmental policy, it's a policy that may be a policy that interacts with other departments, then you cannot write that policy alone. You're going to have to sit down with the other department heads and really discuss this new policy and then implement that policy based on what was discussed at that table, the final solution. Because if not, you're developing policies that are going to conflict, and when something hits the fan, that's when you're going to realize that policy did not work. And that's going to be unfair for the department heads who are trying, or the supervisors who are trying to figure it out, can't get a common solution, and now they're going to be held responsible for not doing anything to move forward. we need to try to help out, try to build policies that alleviate the conflict, but most importantly, have that road of compromise. If that road of compromise is not established in that policy, then the supervisors, you guys should have the discretion to find that compromise. And then if you find that compromise, move forward with it. Report it, document it, and explain why. And then someone in the higher up should look at it and say, hey, you know what? Great job. I understand what happened. Now we're going to go back and sit down and talk about this policy. Because that's how we get better. That is the evolution of corrections. Hopefully I was able to answer it. So again, conflict, it's about communication and compromise. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Love you guys. Please, if you haven't, the show is for those brave men and women that work behind the wall in the shadows of justice. Please subscribe, interact, share these videos, and don't forget to hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. As always, stay safe.